The afternoon sun beat down merciless and hot as those 6 tracking dogs closed in, getting nearer with every passing second. Samuel could hear them now, really hear them, the sound of paws hitting dirt, the heavy panting, that excited whining dogs make when they know they've got their prey cornered. His legs were shaking so bad he didn't know how much longer they'd hold him up. Every muscle screamed for him to stop, to just give up and let whatever was gonna happen, happen. But his mama's voice echoed in his head, telling him about that North Star, about freedom, about being worth more than what any master said. Through the trees ahead, Samuel spotted something that made his heart jump, a clearing and people moving around in it, real people. But the question that froze his blood was simple. Would they help him, or would they hand him right over to the catchers for the reward money? He was out of options. The dogs were maybe 30 seconds behind him now, close enough that he swore he could smell them. His strength was gone. Everything came down to what happened in the next few minutes. Samuel burst through the brush into the clearing, stumbling and nearly falling. A dozen faces turned toward him, all of them black, all of them staring. An old woman stepped forward, her eyes sharp and assessing. Behind Samuel, the baying of the hounds reached a fever pitch. They'd be here in seconds. The woman opened her mouth to speak, but Samuel never heard what she said, because right then, Brutus, the lead dog, came crashing through the undergrowth, teeth bared and ready to strike.
Samuel had been running and hiding for what felt like forever, using every trick he could think of to throw those dogs off his trail. The creek, the fallen tree, doubling back, he'd done it all. His feet were torn up, his body was past exhausted, and he was pretty sure he couldn't take another step. But somehow he kept going. That's what you did when the alternative was getting dragged back in chains. The swamp had been the worst part. Waist-deep water, mosquitoes thick as fog, and the constant fear that every shadow might be an alligator. But it had also been his salvation, at least temporarily. The water and mud had confused the dogs' noses, bought them some time. As darkness started falling, Samuel finally collapsed on a small patch of dry ground. He lay there listening to his own breathing, wondering if this was it, if he'd finally pushed his body too far. The sounds of the dogs had faded, but he didn't know if that meant he lost them or if they were just regrouping. That's when he heard it. Voices, human voices, talking quiet somewhere close by. His heart started racing again. Could be slave catchers setting a trap. Could be locals who turn him in for the reward. Or, and this seemed almost too good to hope for, could be people who might actually help. Samuel was too weak to run anymore, too lost to find his way alone. Whatever happened next, he had to take the chance.
He pushed himself up and started moving toward those voices, each step feeling like it might be his last. He pushed through a wall of bushes and found himself at the edge of a hidden settlement. Actual shelters, a fire, people living out here in the middle of nowhere. A woman's voice cut through the darkness. "Who's there? Show yourself slow, or we'll assume you're a threat." Samuel raised his hands and tried to speak, but his voice came out as a croak. "Please, the dogs, they're coming." That's when his legs finally gave out completely, and he hit the ground hard. The last thing he saw before everything went black was figures rushing toward him, and the last thing he heard was someone shouting, "Get him inside, now!" Samuel woke up to the smell of wood smoke and the feeling of a cool cloth on his forehead. For a second he panicked, thinking he'd been caught and brought back to the plantation. But when his eyes focused, he saw the face of an elderly black woman looking down at him with concern, not cruelty. "Easy now," she said. "You're safe, for the moment anyway." Her name was Ruth, and over the next few hours, Samuel learned things that seemed almost impossible. This wasn't just a random group of runaways hiding out. It was an actual community. They'd been here for almost 2 years, helping people escape,
living free right under the noses of every slave catcher and plantation owner in the region. Ruth explained it all while other folks treated his wounds and gave him food and water. They had systems, plans, knowledge passed down and hard-earned. They knew how to stay hidden, how to help runaways, how to survive. But when Samuel told them about the 6 tracking dogs and the professional catchers following him, Ruth's expression turned serious. "Those dogs will pick up the trail again come morning," she said. "And when they do, that trail leads straight here, to all of us." Some folks wanted to pack up and run right then, but Ruth shook her head.
"We've worked too hard to build this place. We're not running." She looked around at her people, and Samuel saw something fierce and determined in her eyes. "We're gonna fight back, not with weapons, with our heads." She called everyone together and started laying out a plan that sounded crazy and brilliant at the same time. They had this mixture, herbs, peppers, strong-smelling plants that could mess with the dogs' noses. They'd create fake trails going every direction, confuse the hell out of those tracking dogs. "We've been preparing for this since day one," Ruth said. "Now we get to see if it works." All night, folks worked in pairs, creating those false trails, spreading the mixture, disguising Samuel's real scent. By the time the first hint of dawn showed in the sky, they were ready. Ruth positioned people in the trees and bushes around the clearing, not to fight, but to watch, to see if their plan would actually work against professional slave catchers and their prized tracking dogs. Samuel, hidden in one of the shelters, listened as the morning birds started singing. It seemed wrong somehow that nature could be so peaceful when his whole future hung in the balance. Then he heard it, distant at first, but getting closer, the baying of hounds. Ruth's hand touched his shoulder, signaling him to stay absolutely still and quiet. The sounds got louder, closer. The dogs were coming fast, confident, following what they thought was a clear trail. Samuel held his breath. In about 30 seconds, they'd know if Ruth's plan was genius or if they'd all just signed their own death warrants. The first dog burst into view at the clearing's edge, Brutus, the huge, brindled beast, nose to the ground. And then something happened. The dog stopped dead, his head jerking up in confusion. The other 5 dogs crashed into the same spot and started acting crazy, running in circles, whining. But were the catchers buying it? Samuel heard a man's voice, Crenshaw, he figured, cursing loud and angry. "What the hell's wrong with these damn dogs?"
From his hiding spot, Samuel watched something he never thought he'd see. Those 6 vicious tracking dogs, the ones that had terrified him for the past 2 days, completely losing their minds with confusion. Brutus, the lead dog that had never failed a hunt in 5 years, was running in circles like a confused puppy. The other dogs weren't any better. One headed north, then stopped and turned south. Another started east, then circled back. They whined and pawed at their own noses, trying to clear away the overwhelming smells that Ruth's people had laid down. Silas Crenshaw looked like he might explode from pure rage. His face turned red as he yelled at the dogs, at his fellow catchers, at the universe itself. These were his prized animals, his reputation, and they were making him look like a fool. "Someone's messed with the scent," Coleman Briggs called out, kneeling to examine the ground. "These tracks go in 6 different directions. This was planned." Samuel felt a surge of something he hadn't experienced in a long time, hope mixed with a kind of fierce pride. These people, Ruth's community, they'd outsmarted the system. They'd taken the slave catcher's best weapon and turned it useless. For the next 2 hours, the catchers tried everything. They separated the dogs, they followed different trails, they searched and cursed and got more frustrated by the minute. Every trail led nowhere, into thorn thickets, to dead ends, in circles. By mid-morning, even Brutus had given up, lying in the shade and refusing to work anymore. Crenshaw and his men gathered in the clearing, defeated and angry. They knew they'd been outsmarted, but they couldn't quite believe it. Property, that's how they thought of enslaved people, wasn't supposed to be capable of this kind of planning. "We've lost this one," Crenshaw finally admitted, the words seeming to physically hurt him. "The trail's gone cold. We head back." From the trees, Ruth watched them prepare to leave. She allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. It was a victory, small in the grand scheme of things, but meaningful. As the sounds of the departing catchers faded, the community started emerging from their hiding spots. They'd done it. They'd faced down the slave system's enforcers and won. Ruth climbed down from her tree and went to Samuel. "You see," she said quietly, "they're not invincible. None of it is." But as the community began to relax and celebrate their victory, Ruth knew they couldn't stay in this moment too long. They had to move Samuel along, get him to the next station on the Underground Railroad. Every hour he stayed put them all at risk. "We'll get you moving tonight," Ruth told Samuel. "Isaiah and Marcus will take you to the first safe house. It's run by a Quaker family about 15 miles north. Good people." As the day passed, the community prepared Samuel for the next leg of his journey. They gave him supplies, clean clothes, medicine for his wounds. A young woman named Grace gave him herbs for healing. A man named Thomas gave him a compass he'd made himself. And Ruth gave him something that made his eyes water, a small carved wooden star her dead son had made. "He carved this because I told him stories about following the North Star to freedom," she said. "I want you to have it. Let it remind you that you're not alone." As darkness fell, Samuel stood with Isaiah and Marcus at the edge of the settlement, ready to continue north. The community gathered to say goodbye, each person offering words of encouragement or a brief embrace. Ruth was the last. She hugged him fierce and whispered, "Be smart, be safe, be free." The three men moved into the forest, heading north by the light of the stars. Samuel looked back once at the settlement, at the people who'd saved his life, then turned his face toward freedom and kept walking. They'd been traveling for about 3 hours, moving steady through the darkness, when Marcus suddenly froze. He held up his hand, signaling the others to stop and stay quiet. Samuel's heart started pounding. He listened hard but couldn't hear anything unusual. Then Marcus whispered, "Dogs, different ones, but definitely dogs, and they're between us and the safe house." Isaiah cursed under his breath. Blackwood must have hired a second team of catchers. He's not giving up. They were trapped. Dogs ahead, the plantation behind, and miles of dangerous territory in every direction. Marcus looked at Samuel, and in the dim starlight, Samuel could see the worry in his eyes. "We've got a serious problem," Marcus said, "and we've got about 5 minutes to figure out what we're going to do about it."
Marcus stood frozen, listening to those dogs in the distance, his mind racing through options. They were all bad. Going back meant leading the catchers straight to Ruth's settlement. Going forward meant running right into a fresh team of hunters. Standing still meant getting caught between both groups. Then Isaiah spoke up, his voice calm despite the situation. "There's another way. An old route we stopped using 'cause it's risky as hell. Goes through the Thornton property." "The Thornton place?" Marcus looked skeptical. "That's suicide. They've got overseers everywhere." "During the day, yeah," Isaiah said. "But at night, most of that property is empty fields, and it cuts the distance to the safe house in half." It was a gamble, a big one, but Samuel had learned something over the past few days. Sometimes you had to bet everything on one desperate play. "Let's do it," Samuel said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. They changed direction, moving fast but careful through the darkness. The Thornton plantation was huge, one of the biggest in the county. Getting caught on it would be worse than getting caught in the woods.
There'd be no confusion about what they were doing there. They reached the edge of the cultivated fields just after midnight. Row after row of cotton stretched out under the stars, and Samuel felt a familiar, sick feeling in his stomach. He'd spent his whole life in fields like these, breaking his back to make rich men richer.
"Stay low," Isaiah whispered. "Move between the rows. Stop if you hear anything." They were about halfway across when Samuel heard voices. Not dogs this time, but men. Overseers doing a night patrol, probably looking for exactly what they'd found. Runaways trying to cut through the property. The three of them dropped flat between the cotton rows. Samuel pressed his face into the dirt, hardly daring to breathe. Through the plants, he could see the glow of a lantern maybe 50 yards away, moving slowly in their direction. Marcus touched Samuel's arm and pointed. There was an irrigation ditch about 20 feet away, deep enough to hide in. They crawled toward it, inch by painful inch, trying not to make the cotton plants rustle. Samuel had just reached the edge of the ditch when his hand came down on something that moved and then exploded into angry buzzing. Wasps! He'd disturbed a ground nest of wasps. The insects swarmed over him in seconds, stinging his hands, his face, his neck. Every instinct screamed at him to jump up, to run, to make noise. But making noise meant getting caught, and getting caught meant everything: his freedom, his life, the safety of Isaiah and Marcus and everyone back at Ruth's settlement. So Samuel bit down on his own arm to keep from crying out and let the wasp sting him while he finished crawling into that ditch. Isaiah and Marcus followed, and the three of them huddled there in the dark, covered in mud and wasp stings, while the overseers walked within 10 feet of where they hid. "Thought I heard something over here," one of the overseers said. "Probably just an animal," the other replied. "Come on, let's finish the circuit and get back. I'm tired." The lantern light moved away, the voices faded, and Samuel, Isaiah, and Marcus stayed in that ditch for another 20 minutes, making absolutely sure the overseers were gone, before they climbed out and continued north. By the time they reached the far edge of the Thornton property, Samuel's face and hands had swollen from the wasp stings. He could barely see out of his left eye. But they'd made it. They were through. As dawn started breaking in the east, painting the sky pink and gold, they reached the Quaker farm. It looked ordinary enough, a small house, a barn, some fields, but Isaiah led them straight to the barn and knocked on the door in a specific pattern. 3 quick, 2 slow, 3 quick. The door opened to reveal a thin white man with kind eyes and a gentle face. "Friends," he said simply. "Come in, quickly now." Inside the barn, they climbed into a hidden loft above the main floor, accessible only through a cleverly disguised trapdoor. The space was small but clean, with blankets, water, and food already waiting. "Rest here today," the Quaker man, his name was Joseph, told him. "Tonight we'll move thee to the next station, but thee are safe now for this moment." Isaiah and Marcus stayed for a few hours, letting Samuel rest, making sure his wasp stings were treated with some kind of paste that Joseph brought. Then they prepared to head back to the settlement. Before they left, Isaiah pulled Samuel aside. "You did good," he said, "real good. Not many folks could have stayed quiet with those wasps all over them. That took strength." Samuel felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you," he managed. "Tell Ruth, tell her I'll make it. Tell her I'll be free like I promised." "We will," Marcus said. "And Samuel, when you get north, when you're safe and settled, help the next person. That's how this works. We all help each other." They left just after noon, disappearing back into the forest. Samuel watched them go, these men who'd risked their lives for a stranger, and felt the weight of what they'd said. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone who would come after. For 3 days, Samuel stayed hidden in that loft while his body recovered from the ordeal he'd been through. Joseph and his wife, a quiet woman named Hannah, brought him food and water. They asked for nothing in return. Their faith taught them that slavery was a sin, and helping people escape was their moral duty. On the 4th night, Joseph woke Samuel in the darkness. "It's time. The next conductor is here." They traveled that night in the back of a wagon, hidden under sacks of grain. The conductor was a free black man named William, who'd made this run dozens of times. He didn't talk much, just drove steady and careful through the night. Over the next 6 weeks, Samuel moved from station to station, safe house to safe house. He traveled in wagons, on foot, once even on a riverboat. He met Quakers and Methodists, free black folks and white abolitionists, people from all walks of life united by their belief that slavery was wrong. Some of the houses were fancy, some were barely more than shacks, but every single one represented incredible courage. The people helping him were breaking the law, risking fines and imprisonment, putting themselves and their families in danger. The Fugitive Slave Act made it a federal crime to help runaways, but they did it anyway, because it was right. Not every moment was safe. There were close calls, dogs in the distance, slave catchers at checkpoints, suspicious locals who asked too many questions. But each time, the network held. Someone always knew a back route, a hiding place, a way forward. Samuel crossed from Mississippi into Tennessee, then Kentucky, then into the free state of Ohio. The night he crossed that border, stepping onto free soil for the first time in his life, he fell to his knees and wept. 23 years of bondage ended by one desperate decision and the help of dozens of people he'd never met before. In Ohio, he stayed with a black family in a small town while he figured out his next steps. They helped him find work at a factory, helped him get settled. It wasn't easy. He'd never been paid for his labor before, never had to manage his own money or make his own decisions about where to live and what to do. But it was freedom. He wrote letters, though he knew they'd never reach their destinations. A letter to his mother, wherever she was, telling her he'd made it. A letter to Ruth and her community, thanking them for saving his life. A letter to every person still in chains, promising that he'd never forget them. And he kept his promise to Marcus and Isaiah. When other runaways started arriving in Ohio, Samuel helped them. He gave them places to stay, helped them find work, shared what he'd learned. He joined the local anti-slavery society, spoke at meetings about what life under slavery was really like. When the Emancipation Proclamation was signed on January 1st, 1863, Samuel was there in the streets celebrating with thousands of other black folks, tears streaming down his face. It wasn't complete freedom yet. The proclamation only freed slaves in Confederate states, and the war still raged, but it was a beginning. After the war ended and the 13th Amendment was ratified, Samuel traveled back south for the first time, not to Mississippi, he wasn't ready for that, but to Tennessee, to thank some of the people who'd helped him along the way. He found Ruth and Joseph still running their farm, still helping people, even though it wasn't illegal anymore. They were older, more tired, but their eyes still held that same gentle determination. "Thee made it," Joseph said simply, shaking Samuel's hand. "We prayed thee would." Samuel tried to find Ruth's settlement, but it was gone. He didn't know if they'd moved, if they'd been discovered, if they'd simply decided to come out of hiding after emancipation. But in a church in Memphis, he met a woman who knew what had happened. "Ruth passed 2 years ago," she said gently. "Natural causes in her sleep. But her community survived. They all made it to freedom, every last one of them. And they helped over 60 people escape before the war ended. 60 souls who wouldn't have made it without her." Samuel felt grief and pride mixing in his chest. Ruth had lost her son to slavery, but she'd saved so many others. He never found out what happened to Silas Crenshaw and the other slave catchers. After the war, those men probably just melted back into society, found other work. Some maybe admitted the evil they'd been a part of. Most probably didn't. But those dogs, those 6 vicious tracking dogs that had seemed so unstoppable, they'd been defeated by human intelligence and collective action. And that mattered. It showed that even the most powerful systems of oppression had weaknesses, that people working together could overcome incredible odds. Samuel eventually settled in Philadelphia, where he married a woman named Clara, who'd also escaped slavery. They had 3 children, and Samuel made sure every one of them learned to read and write, things he'd been denied his whole childhood. He told them stories about his escape, about Ruth and her community, about the network of people who'd risked everything to help strangers. He lived to be 72 years old, long enough to see his grandchildren born free, long enough to see black men elected to Congress, long enough to see the country slowly, painfully trying to rebuild itself without slavery. On his last day, sitting on his porch with Clara beside him
and his grandchildren playing in the yard, Samuel took out the small wooden star that Ruth had given him all those years ago. He'd carried it with him every day of his life since that morning in the forest. "Tell them," he said to Clara, knowing his time was short. "Tell the children and their children and everyone who comes after. Tell them it wasn't just luck that got me north. It was people who saw a stranger in trouble and decided to help, even when it cost them. Tell them that's what freedom really means, not just being free yourself, but making sure others can be free too." He died that night, peacefully, in his own bed, in his own house, a free man. And his story, the story of 6 vicious dogs, a hidden community, and one young man's desperate flight towards freedom, was passed down through his family for generations. It became part of the larger story of resistance and resilience, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of the long, difficult journey from bondage to freedom that defined American history. The dogs had been released to track him down, confident in their purpose, but something extraordinary had unfolded instead, a testament to human courage, ingenuity, and the unbreakable bonds of community. Samuel had run towards freedom and found not just escape, but family, purpose, and hope. And in the end, that hope had carried him all the way home. The end. In memory of the millions who didn't make it, and in honor of those who helped them try.